In the 2012 presidential election, minority voters were critical to President Obama's success. This election, both parties are fighting for the minority vote. Ries has more.
The U.S. electorate this year will be the country's most racially and ethnically diverse ever. Nearly 1 in 3 eligible voters on Election Day, 31%, will be Hispanic, Black, Asian, or another racial or ethnic minority. Both parties have attempted to fall in favor with minorities.
What is happening is a sweeping effort to disempower and disenfranchise people of color.
We do not do enough to step in to the community and learn what is happening and what is going on.
Experts say, however, that the candidates aren't focused on the issues that matter most to minorities.
The coverage in relation to minorities has been very polarized again, though, because Donald Trump, for example, has been reaching out in pretty unorthodox ways to some minorities and in ways that have irated, for example, some people within black communities. In many ways, I feel, because there is a lack of understanding what the issues may be for some of those communities.
Hillary Clinton is up 89 points with black voters and 28 points with Hispanic voters. For District Wire News, I'm Grace Ries.
Thanks, Grace. Latino voters have historically supported Democratic candidates over Republicans in every election since at least the 1980s. But the group typically exhibits low voter turnout, according to the Pew Research Center. Let's see those numbers again from the Pew Research Center poll. Just over 27 million Latinos are registered to vote, a record high this year. Here to talk with me about the issues facing the Latino community is Martin Maldonado. Thanks for being here, Martin.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me, what are some of these big issues that are going to be important to Latino voters this year?
I think as usual, immigration is always going to be a huge issue, especially along the southwestern states. I'm from Florida. Immigration is always going to be a big issue there. I think it's really nuanced because you have a large percentage of Latino immigrants that come from that are in more low-income segments of the population. You also have an increasingly it's a segment of the population which is more highly educated. It's also Latino, and yet both of these groups tend to be supporting the Democratic candidate. I think Donald Trump's policies regarding border control, regarding deportation forces, in addition to his position on trade, is really alienating voters that were traditionally more moderate. So I think that that's going to be a thing that's going to have a huge impact on the way Latinos are going to go this election. So we have seen some of these candidates kind of reaching out in ways. Obviously, this is a group that has a lot of influence. So, for example, we had a speech given by Tim Kaine where he was speaking completely in Spanish, and he has tweeted in Spanish before. Do you think that type of outreach, like this tweet here where he says, you have a responsibility to participate and vote according to your values in Spanish. I mean, is that kind of outreach actually resonating with Latino voters? I'd say it might marginally help, Tim Kaine and Hillary Clinton in some way, just because from a relatability perspective, I am almost, 100% positive that most people do vote on issues, and Latino voters are a minority group which is very much aware of how different policy issues affect them. So, I mean, from a cultural perspective, it might help very little. I do think that Latinos are going to be deciding who to vote for based on issues rather than that kind of outreach. Okay, so you're seeing it more of immigration and that main issue kind of driving their decisions, as opposed to these shows of reaching out to that group. Interesting. Okay, so let's talk about the young people as well. So 44% of registered Latino voters are millennials. So what can these candidates do to reach that even more specific demographic? As a sub-demographic, I mean, I think like what you say, demographics is very much the key to it. I think you have to look at it like divide up the category into an even more nuanced view. I think that if you look at it from socioeconomic demographic as well. Latinos are more represented in lower income groups. And then again, I think that's where issues resonate the most. If the Democrats are trying to target disenfranchised voters in terms of electoral access, if they're trying to reach out people who are disproportionately affected by the criminal justice system, if they're trying to reach the people who have been sort of hurt by structural economic changes, then I think that the course that they've been taking since the beginning of the primary campaign is going to help them in the long run. I think if the Trump campaigns try to pick up on that, not necessarily reaching out to the youth Latinos, but reaching to demographics that are affected by certain types of issues. So as long as the Democrats are consistent on their message as to this types of policies that are going to improve the socioeconomic status of young Latinos, that should be good enough to win that vote.
Is there anything that the Republicans are doing for their part that could pull in these voters?
I personally don't think so. I think most Latinos would agree with me. I think that I think that the fact that Republicans have, for example, made education a very localized issue, that kind of goes greatly against the interests of Latinos being favored to some extent by federal policies, which have increased access, for example, affirmative action, which has been very, very beneficial to the Latino community. When Republicans stand against policies like that, they risk alienation, and I mean you can probably see that in poll numbers from the very demographics that they used to talk about trying to bring into their coalition.
Great. Well, thank you so much
Absolutely.
for being here with us, Martin.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up, how will the latest Metro safety project affect your commute? We talk to concerned riders about their frustration with the Metro. We'll be right back.